If you're a compliance professional, then Compliance Man Chooses the Target is here to help you figure out what to focus on and how within your organization. Join your host, Tim Khasanov-Batirov, the Compliance Man, for 3 minutes of condensed compliance awesomeness.
Hello, everyone. We are back again for another episode of Compliance Man Chooses the Target with Tim Khasanov-Batirov. Compliance Chooses the Target. In this episode, we're going to look at some compliance risks in Russia. So, Tim, welcome back. And what do you have for our listeners today?
Glad to hear you, Tom. And today we'll talk about compliance risks in Russia. So, welcome everyone to episode 5 of Compliance Man Chooses the Target with Tim Khasanov-Batirov series of podcasts. My goal is to highlight matters that should be on the agenda of practitioners that deploy compliance programs in industries or countries of active FCPA enforcement. In the next 3 minutes or so, I will target 3 specific matters that you might like to address in the course of implementation of your compliance program. Today, we will focus on compliance risks in Russia. So, target number 1 would be the compliance program. Russia is number 6 in FCPA countdown of all times. In practice, it means that this jurisdiction should get your special attention in the course of deploying corporate compliance program. Your company could face risks in many business areas. What would be the best way to find out if you are on the safe side? I suggest you to do assessment of the corporate compliance program in Russia based on the DOJ's guidance called Evaluation of Corporate Compliance Program, which I have mentioned in our previous show. The most effective way to do this exercise would be engagement of the outside counsel. While this tip might look pretty obvious, I want to specifically mention the test which should be addressed in order to get a full picture. The international team from counsel side should consist of both US lawyers who have practical experience in FCPA matter, along with Russian attorneys who would be able to tailor the US recommendations in accordance with Russian legislation. I will elaborate on the importance of this test when we discuss the target number 3. So, we are ready to talk about target number 2, which is risk assessment and risk appetite. The vital part of your efforts on global arena is FCPA risk assessment. There is no chance that any company would be able to spend $1 million spreading compliance resources on unnecessary or minor issues. In the very same time in practice, I have seen that sometimes companies were not clear on particular risks were trying to mitigate. In plain language, they were just wasting compliance resources by doing something for the sake of doing something. To be effective on a high-risk market, you should define priorities, the most risky areas that you would like to address. As a second step, the company should define the risk appetite, or so to say, the internal standard on risk acceptance that the company agrees to take. And let's come to target number 3, which is legislation. While deploying international anti-bribery standards in the branch of your organization in Moscow, do not ignore local laws. The reasons are the following. Sometimes Russian anti-corruption legislation might contain provisions that in some instances are more restrictive than FCPA. For example, local requirement in certain cases to notify the former governmental employer of your newly hired ex-governmental official. Or another example, certain FCPA principles might collude local laws. For example, due diligence of your business partner should be construed not to breach Russian antitrust legislation. Or let's get another example. Some pieces of legislation should be reviewed carefully prior to deployment of the compliance instruments. For example, Russian data privacy laws should be analyzed prior to launch of your whistleblower line. So, join me for the next episode of Compliance Man Chooses the Target with Tim Khasanov-Batirov. Learn more compliance tips from Tim Khasanov-Batirov at complianceinpostussr.com. Thank you and hope to talk to you on our next show.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of Compliance Man Chooses the Target. Help us get the word out by rating and leaving a review.